Welcome back to the Up in the Blue Seats podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Harts. We're as always joined by Mollie Walker, Larry Brooks, and Brian Boyle. We're going to hit right into this here. There's not much time left. The new year is on the horizon, and the Rangers, or, as I'm calling them now, the Avengers, are back at it again. They took down the Capitals last night, 5-1 in another revenge game. The Rangers are making a point to avenge for their losses as they come see fit. Big game from Keandre Miller. We'll talk about him in a little bit. Igor Shesterkin, he's now on another 4-0 run here, looking great again. Michael Pekka, is he on the move? So we're gonna just jump in here. So let's go here. So again, Rangers beat the Capitals after losing to them a couple weeks. It's a nice win, I feel like, especially coming off a Christmas break where a little bit of a lull, you have some family stuff going on. I think you saw them in the first period, but they came back strong. They looked good in the second. Brian, you were talking to us, saying how you were going on the MSG network and you didn't really have much to talk about. Well, the Rangers kind of helped you there in that second, huh?
That's
Well,
so
I mean,
funny.
yeah, that was my second game on that was my second game on TV, and the first one was both teams had played, and it was a back to back, and they both traveled. I mean, slugfest. But I anticipated that. This is what happens. You forget how to play hockey. It feels like you've never played before, even when you just take 3 days off. It's very uncomfortable. Your feet kind of hurt. You get a little gravy in the boots. And it's just, you try to have a low event game because you don't want to get your doors blown off. But it really is if you're at home, you should win that game. And, it was boring a little bit in the first, and then it was a lot of fun the rest of the way.
Brian needed
Well,
some emotional support.
You should have played back when they played afternoon games on the 26th. They had the break on the 24th and 25th, and the schedule
I honestly think it'd be better.
26th, and often the Rangers would play the Devils on the afternoon of the 26th. And it was an interesting game every year.
Yeah, I think you'd have to get in a few scraps just to get the blood pumping a little bit. But the 3 days, I love it as a player. I love it. And it's one day where you're kind of uncomfortable. And then, I think it does a world of good for the next, couple weeks.
And it definitely did them a world of good to get that victory. They are, of course, still in first place in the Metro, still in first place in the East. And they are top of the league. They are tied with the Canucks at 49 points. One of the things that's just amazing to me is their home and road splits. 12-4-0 at home, 12-4-1 on the road. The mark of a good team in my mind is being able to play consistency. And I think that that's one of the things that was talked about post game, especially by Keandre Miller, how the Rangers, they're trying to elevate and get to that higher next step. How can the Rangers, I guess, be more consistent where, you think about the losses where they'll have a really bad loss where they don't show up and then they'll be fine the next day. Is that something that's easy to work on, Brian, or how is the team able to, fix that consistency measure?
Well, I guess maybe if you have like a B game, right? When you know that, because during the season, different teams have different travel schedules, right? Some are coming off long road trips. Some have gone through time zone changes. It's not always equal like it is in the playoffs where the travel's the same. You're going back, everybody's, doing the same thing. So that can affect a team. And if you are typically it's a veteran team, if you've been around, what you're doing when you don't have your A game to sort of, I don't know, keep it close or, limit mistakes, try to grind it out, so to speak. That's the mark of a team that is in the business of winning. And that's a maturity. I think that's younger teams just want to get their goals, want to get their points, want to get their stats, younger players. So when you have that maturity level where it's like, hey, we're here to win and there's no excuses. We played, this is our third and four nights. We've traveled, whatever it is. You find that kind of that B game. You use different guys. The coach is smart enough to use the whole bench. And it happens. Having said that, like, you get blown out. The best teams get blown out. It happens. Coming back and, like you said, avenging that, like, they didn't like how they played in Washington. You heard all the noise. They were in first place still, and it was like, what's wrong with Igor? What's wrong with this guy? What's wrong with that guy? And they've answered those to this point. Now we'll see what they do next game. This is a tough challenge going down to Florida and playing a couple games. So, you'll see. And again, throughout the whole season, there's all this opportunities to learn about your team, get better. They're all dress rehearsals for the big picture, which is the playoffs.
That's been the most impressive thing to me is the way that they've come back against these teams that they've gotten blown out by in the first meeting. It's the identifying and correcting the mistakes that they made against said team and just being able to apply it to the game plan going forward. And in talking to some of the guys in the room, that's coming from the top down. That is a coaching staff emphasis is what I've gathered. And I think that's, even the fact that the players are pointing at the coaching staff as the spearheaders of that sort of initiative, I think is such an impressive trait for this Rangers team. And it just shows that they're being very well coached at the moment. And I think that's it's a buy-in. And I definitely think that it's not just that they've come back and beaten these teams, they've come back and blown them out themselves, on a few occasions. So it's really encouraging to see a team be able to identify the mistakes that they made and correct it moving forward.
I think what's impressive about them also is that they're able to find their game as games go on. The other night against Buffalo wasn't particularly great game. Following the Edmonton game, that wasn't a great game, but they stuck with it and they were able to find a way to win. And last night, first period, low energy game, not much going on, and they took control of the game in the second period. So this is a team that's and I've said this from the start actually, that these guys talked the talk last May. They wanted to be coached. And there was a lot of skepticism over the summer about, well, we'll see about that. And they are now walking the walk because they are being coached and they're receptive to it. And they go about their business with one purpose, I think, and that is to win. And that is to get better every day. And they're trying. That's one thing. They're imperfect, but they try. They do. And that's something I think that is very admirable about this group.
Well, that's a perfect transition for one of the things that I did want to bring up is Michael Peca. Larry, you wrote a Post Sports Plus article, which highly recommend. If you're not a Post Sports Plus member, sign on, and definitely worth the read, especially this one. Michael Peca has done a phenomenal job with this Ranger team. He supervises the power play and faceoffs, and look where they rank in the league in those two areas alone. It's nice to see that these Ranger players are giving it back to their coaches. But is Michael Peca someone that you can envision being picked off by another NHL team in the relatively short future?
Oh, I'm sure he's going to be a hot assistant. He's going to be at the top of the list of a number of teams next summer, I'm sure. And Buffalo certainly makes the most sense, right? And captain of the Sabres, he was an assistant coach in their organization the last couple of years. They may be headed for a 13th straight year out of the playoffs. I know, Don Granato's a very popular guy. He's a good coach, but I'm not sure he would be able to survive another playoff miss. So, it's the hot assistants are always at the top of the list, and I think Pekka will be one. Now, he may he may think that he might need more experience, that he hasn't run a team on his own yet, except for junior teams, and he might want another year behind the New York bench, but he might not either. So I think I think we have to be aware of the fact that the Rangers have a pretty good thing going with their staff, but as they are successful, they're going to be picked off too. We've talked about this, and Mollie and I have written about this from the summer. What an interesting staff.
Yeah.
They put together. It's an eclectic staff. It's Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
On
It's
it.
just unique. It's a unique blend.
past head coach in Housley, obviously Hall of Fame defenseman in Housley, Dan Muse, who people just not
Yeah.
kind of in the background because he
He
didn't.
lives at
Yeah.
the rink, Larry.
Yeah.
And
Rink rat.
right, and so
Lives
this
there.
is just a very it's a really interesting staff, and um, they these coaches have gotten, I think, the most out of these. Well, the players are receptive. They're receptive to being coached.
I've never heard a Voices coach Harry as boomingly as Dan Muses does across a rink.
I had him in Nashville too. I'm like, go home, Dan. You gotta go home. And he wears it too. He wears it.
Yeah.
He really, and speaking with a couple of players, they really they love what's going on. They love being coached like this. They've all bought in.
He's the one that keeps score. They do their competitions every single practice, every single morning skate. And he's the scorekeeper. I found that out, which I think is funny.
What's really interesting to me about this staff too is that I don't know that it would have worked if this staff had immediately followed David Quinn,
Mm,
because they needed a buffer. They needed,
yeah.
it's just so interesting the way organizations and teams shift dynamics from one coach to another. It's John Tortorella to Alain Vigneault. It's Vigneault to David Quinn. It's Quinn to Gallant. It's Gallant to Laviolette. So they go from stern to
Yeah.
there. There are a lot of extremes. We're talking about a lot of extremes here.
Yeah, a lot of different ends of the spectrum is what I
So,
feel.
so really, I mean, Brian, you were in the middle of it, in the Tortorella to Vino exchange. So what was, and I remember thinking that these guys, I mean, when you got off to such a bad start in the 13, 14, I remember thinking these guys can't handle the freedom. They can't handle
Well, you know what? He was more demanding, I think, than people realize. He was very steadfast in his rules. He didn't have a lot, and he let us manage the room. But
Right.
this is how you play. And if you did it wrong, he didn't yell at you. He's just like, this is how we have to do it. He was very like, not gonna berate you or not gonna sort of, I don't know, embarrass is the right word, because sometimes I liked how you had to get embarrassed, get uncomfortable.
Mm.
For me anyway, it made me play better. But he was just, no, this is how we do it. This is how we do it. And then if you didn't do it, you wouldn't play. So minus some, but during the game, he screamed the whole time in a very high pitched sound that you could not mistake. So I'm like, is this guy gonna stop yelling? But very smart coach, just different tactics. And Torch was a very smart coach, much different tactics. And I remember Glenn came into the room once and talked to us about the coach. We weren't particularly doing great. This was under Torts, and our expectations were a little bit higher. And he's like, just fired the last guy because he was too nice. So you want me to fire this guy because he's too mean? What do you guys want? Like, maybe we should play better. And that was kind of the we all looked at each other like, all right, we should play better. But it's interesting. Like, but AV, I thought maybe it was just you needed to impress your coach, and it wasn't easy to impress him. So you just had to do everything you could. And he was still pretty demanding. His practices were very hard. We skated a lot.
Not the last couple of years.
Really? He had this drill. We go on the line and he would just yell out. He'd stand at a certain point in the rink. It would be closer inside the blue line, outside the blue line, far, but whatever it was. Wherever he was standing, we'd have to go and skate to him and back. So he'd be like, left wings. And I was playing left. I was playing center. I'm like, I'm not doing both. What position am I?
What box do I fit in?
Yeah. And so the wingers were like, it was Kreider, Hagelin, and,
Good
someone
luck
else
to you.
really fast. I'm like,
Eating their dust.
Can I go with this Derek Stepan, Brad Richards, and can I go with the centers, please? So, but we just have to go back and forth for like 20 minutes. We'd be going stops and starts like twice a week. I'm like, man, this guy doesn't scream at us, but this is not fun. So we had that demanding guy.
Certainly the last year and even the last couple of years, the team practiced a lot less. The practices were a lot less intense, and that actually was one of the things when they were looking for the coach to replace him. They were looking for a guy who was going to practice the team hard, and that was David Quinn, who believed in practice. No, no doubt about that. That was, he said, I can't, when the occasional day when they had to give them the off day, he would shake at it. I can't believe that we can't skate today.
Go play 82 games then, David.
Is in college anymore. No. Well, it's interesting, how this team has bought in and it's worked. As apparent by the standings, and their record. And you're only as good as your record says you are. Quickly close things out before we head on to our Winter Classic talk, our 2012 Winter Classic talk. Yeah, it's some good stuff there. Let's take a quick look at what's left in the calendar here. We've got the Panthers coming up with, someone who Larry has his eye on for a potential trade target in Matthew Tkachuk. How important? I mean, the Rangers in the past calendar year are 52, 18, and 8. Things didn't end well in the playoffs last year. But it has been, from a winning side of things, it's been a successful year. You want to see the Rangers close things out hard in Florida here. I guess, what are you looking to see from this Ranger team when they go face the Panthers? Could be someone they face in the playoffs coming up.
Well, I'm really interested in these two games. I think these are fascinating games, challenges for them, and I'm looking to see how they're going to handle Florida's physicality. Because I think that's the weakness in the Ranger team. They play hard, but I know it's not necessarily the size of the dog in the fight. Sometimes it is, and I think I think the Florida mentality is an interesting one. They're an aggressive, physical team, and I'm interested to see how the Rangers respond to that. And then I look at Tampa, and I just look at Tampa, and it's a championship organization. Back-to-back games. It'll be interesting for them.
Do you like a challenge to close things out, Brian, like that?
We'll see with Trouba too, because like Larry said, and if he's not able to go, that's Florida will come. I mean, that was Winnipeg's team with Paul Maurice in Winnipeg. They were no easy games against them. And then Tampa, Kucherov is on a different planet right now. I keep saying he's underrated still, because he is. They can play really poorly and he can have 4 points and they can win a game, and they get the goalie. So if he's hot, we'll see who plays. I don't know if they play the night before. I haven't seen Tampa's schedule, but that's going to be a challenge for them, going down there and playing a couple of games against two pretty good teams who can be very, very good when they're on their game. So this is exciting to close out the year.
Tampa does not play the day before, so only the Rangers on the second night of a back-to-back.
They're waiting for him.
Exactly.
Yep. Which always worries me a little bit. Well, Brian, we've got you here. We're going to talk about the 2012 Winter Classic. Larry, were you at the Winter Classic in 2012 for the Rangers Flyers?
It was at the Winter Classic.
You were. Do you have any memories from that classic game?
Other than the coach implying that the league and the television networks combined to fix the game.
I mean,
with the ref from Philly.
No, I do remember. I actually, first of all, I do. I love the outdoor games. I do. I think they're great spectacles. I think the league does it great. Honestly, and I went to the first one in 2003 in Edmonton that the Oilers put on, the Montreal Edmonton game, where the highlight was the alumni game, because every one of those Hall of Famers came back and played in the game. And I think I've talked about this before. If not, we can do this another time. But how the Rangers allowed Mark Messier, who was an active player, to play in the alumni game against the Canadians. But anyway, I love it. I do. I love the outdoor games. So, but what I remember about 2012 down in Philly was how the refs just stopped calling penalties against the Flyers at the end. I mean, it really was a little fishy. And then the penalty shot was really kind of bogus
They
too.
knocked the net off.
What's that?
Like I think Voracek knocked the net off.
Yeah, I mean, and then they called McDonough for putting his hand on the puck in the
Mhm.
But
crease.
then they said, no, he knocked the net off. That's what we were told during the
Oh,
game.
okay. So, but it was I have a great time. But I remember too, Mike Rupp scored, right? And he does the Yager salute. Um, so in the locker room after the game, I walked right up to him and I said, "Well, what was that about?" And he said, "Well, I'm not answering that question." So it's like, kind of like, so of course he became a media person. That's what we
He's
would
he's
do.
explained it.
Yeah, yeah. So no, I thought it was a terrific game. It was uh it was just a great experience. I do. I think the outdoor games are great fun, and maybe they don't translate nationally, but they always translate locally. Always.
It's a fun experience. I love that game, and we're gonna do some more talking about it with Brian Boyle coming up next and Up in the Blue Seats. Back on the Up in the Blue Seats podcast, and look, there's a couple things that I thought of when we brought Brian Boyle on to be, one of the hosts of the podcast here, and one of the conversations that I couldn't wait to personally have was about the 2012 Winter Classic. Honestly, one of my favorite games in recent Ranger history, especially with my fandom, me being 33 years old. This is a game that really stands out on a multitude of levels. But Brian, because you got to play in it, I personally have a lot of questions, a lot of comments, and I can't wait to hear from you. So just to give a quick recap of the game, obviously the Rangers won 3-2, the infamous Hank shootout, penalty shot that he stopped with 19 seconds left. A whole lot led up to this game, including the 24/7 series, which there's still an episode. They're tough to find, but there's an episode on YouTube, the first episode, and Brian, you're a feature star in that episode, but we'll get into that in a
Featured
little
anyway.
bit.
Featured.
Yeah. But to kind of start off here, it's amazing that it's now 12 years ago, that Winter Classic, which does it feel like it's been 12 years since playing in that game?
Yeah, that's gross.
No,
That's so long.
Stop it. Please stop it. It does not. But then again, it does, because I look back at, there's pictures that get sent to me in social media and stuff. There's lots of different, memories, and people talk about it all the time. And I just try to picture my life then and now. And it's worlds difference. It's a lot. A lot's happened in a dozen years. But no, it was like leading up to that, I started realizing playing for the Rangers and what that really meant. Obviously it's an original six, but just the media attention and all of the sort of just the noise around it, that you can look at it a number of different ways. And I always looked at it like an opportunity. Like, this is something that people follow. It's on national TV. We play the most national games. Especially if we're successful, there's going to be a lot printed about us. And then when we got 24/7, I was shocked that we said yes as an order.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. So there was a little bit of nerves leading into that, and they started pretty early in the season getting footage. And but that was really when you realize the opportunity and how lucky we were to play for the Rangers, because you just got that attention and realizing what New York is as a whole, like the city and that franchise. You can't take it for granted. And looking back, I'm thankful that I tried to soak as much of it in as I could without getting overwhelmed or losing my focus playing, because I would have got shipped out a lot quicker than I did.
I kind of want to go back to the fact that the Rangers agreed to do that. I'm right there with you. I'm stunned at that, just knowing the organization and working with it and how they operate. I'm wondering what sort of message or what was, did they tell you guys anything just to behave yourselves or, things like that, knowing that people were going to get more of an inside look into the organization. I feel like that's their worst nightmare.
There were meetings. There were meetings, plural. And like you're involved, Molly, now, obviously, and you understand how tight they keep it, which I think if I was still playing, or if I was a coach, or if I was a manager, I would probably do it the same, unfortunately. Um, and that's not ideal for the fans, but you're in the business of winning. So I understand why.
Mm.
Maybe there was pressure from the league. Maybe there was, hey, Philly's a pretty storied franchise as well. I know they're not original six, but they're in that original 12 that
Yeah.
really made the league take off. And look, we're both going to do it. You're going to have Final Cut, and they just I don't I was shocked, but I was excited. We all were really really excited about the prospect of being on HBO because at that point we all watched the Hard Knocks. We all watched
Yeah.
the NFL stuff because we thought it was just so awesome. And we were pro athletes, in the same. We just played a different sports, but we were just like we were so enthralled with how they did training camp, how they brought guys in, how they had check-ins with guys, how they cut guys. Even that was, that was tough to watch because either we had been there or we all knew we were going to be there at some point, and it was just entertainment off the charts for us. So we're like, we get to be that, and we're like, well, I hope we're not on the wrong side of it.
Did you
It
guys have
added
a
to the
big
game.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. Did you guys have a big viewing party or did you watch it separately or at all?
We never watched it all
No.
together,
Oh.
but we did. So like there's certain clips that live on in infamy for me and Andrew. You'll get into it a little, but like those are filmed, and then like a couple weeks go by, in a 2 day span in the league, especially playing on that team and for Torch. There's so many different storylines, and you forget and remember different things, and you have to kind of put it past you, good, bad, or ugly.
Mm.
So then when it comes out, you're like, oh my gosh, what did they edit out? What did they keep in? Oh no. And I'm like at home watching it. And I think it was right around Christmas time when I might have been home watching it for Christmas, or my dad was watching it and I was watching it back here. And I just, it was hilarious. We'll get into it more, but that was hilarious how it all
Well,
kind of, because it came out delayed.
right. And that's always interesting with those kind of things where it's like how long of a time do you have to like rewatch and have to take it all back in again, especially if something bad. Like for instance, like I mentioned, that first episode, it's on YouTube. And they're tough to find, but the first one, it's a good watch because it brought me back. And there's a lot of players on that team, that Ranger team who I was like, man, MDZ, you see Step, you see Anisimov who took a
Artie.
who took a bad penalty, who got, I mean, again, that was a whole nother story for that thing, that episode. But you were in the spotlight a few times in that first episode. People got to know who Brian Boyle was. That you again brings back memories of Torts, man. He reamed you out after you made a bad play that led to a goal against the Maple Leafs. Do you remember that play specifically, exactly what happened there? Because he let you have it on the bench.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And that was
Certainly
like
don't forget.
that
It's
was
become
like
a theme here.
yeah, that was like a 4 out of 10.
That was a four. See, and that's like just watching that show now, watching it back. Because remember, like Torts was your manager then, but you guys are going up against Labs.
Coach.
Coach was he was your head coach, but you're going up against Labs,
Correct.
and to see the compare and contrast against two, because you get the flyer side as well too.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. But then also you were featured that you went out to I guess you guys had a charity event with the Garden of Dreams, where you went to meet the Rockettes and you went to Radio City with Hank and everything like that. How much of the behind the scenes stuff did you appreciate getting put on camera compared to being more private, rather not seeing that kind of stuff for fans?
It was really special for me, and I'll take the reaming because he was right. We did. So in the episode, we're playing Toronto, and Toronto would do this pull up play. They'd cross the blue line, and the puck carrier would pull up near or just inside the blue line, and that player was designated for the defenseman to stay on. Right, the defenseman would gap up, and then the forward who was back checking would kind of sink into the middle in the slot and take on the rush wherever it was coming from. Now, I personally didn't like that because what if I went too far? Then you're giving a guy 20 feet to shoot. I thought if I go to him, the D can really circle back, and then F2 and F3 can catch up to the rush, and at least our D are where they're supposed to be. So it never made sense to me. And I couldn't get it out of my head. So I went at the puck carrier. He sauces one through, and I think they hit the post. It was Kessel. Kessel loves to pull up. Anyways, he draws two guys in and makes the play. So not trying to argue with the coach. I just, you got to play the system no matter what. So I went and started creeping towards Kessel, and I'm like, oh no. And then I was in the spot where I'm like, I have to just keep going. Hopefully I get the puck. And I did not get the puck. The puck went right to the slot and just a glorious chance against. And either Hank bailed me out or he hit the post. And right when it happened, I was like, that's not good. It is not good. The old 2-2 car is gonna get a yelling at. Anyways, we before the game, we had the mic on. And I just know before the game, he's like, he's got the mic on again, like I'm requesting it. And I'm not. So he comes in and listen, he's got the whole rest of the period to cool off. That's why I said he was a 4 out of 10.
Yeah.
Thank God. He's screaming at me on the bench. If you saw him on the bench, it would have been worse. And I'm like, okay. And I come in, he's like, you got that bleeping mic on. You can't even think straight. We've gone over this 100 times. And I'm like, and I'm, yeah, he's right. I'm like,
yeah.
I coach,
He's taking it.
I coach kids now too. And I'm like, I'm not going to argue with him.
Mm.
Now's not the time. And he was 100% right. And then I just, a couple weeks go by, my dad watches it and he's like, why would you go there? I'm like, I explained it to him how I just explained it to you. And he's like, well, did you tell him that? I'm like, yeah. I just piped up in the meeting and said, you're wrong.
Yeah.
You're wrong.
No, I didn't, Dad. Anyways, he's laughing. I'm laughing. We're doing the skate around at the practice the day after it airs. This is a couple weeks later. And I'm like, hey, Torts. He's like, what? I'm like, did you watch the episode? He goes, what episode? I'm like, you know what I'm talking about. Come on. He goes, yeah. I go, my dad, I think, is still laughing at you reaming me out. And he starts laughing and he like slashes me on the foot and skates away.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got, and that was like, we're good.
Yeah.
We're good here. The Garden of Dreams thing was cool that they took that around and we got to take kids who they lived a couple miles from Manhattan, maybe even less. And we're in a limo. We picked up, I think, 5 or 6 kids, and it was me, Delzato, Stepan, and Hank. And we're all in this limo and we're giving them popcorn and they're like, but so we get into the city and they're like looking out the window in awe.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you looking at? They're like, I've never been to the city.
Oh.
And I'm like, you can see the city. And they're like, yeah, I've never been. None of them had ever been to New York, like downtown Manhattan.
Yeah.
So we got to go to Radio City. We saw the Christmas spectacular. I'm crushing popcorn with my like 3D shades on. I'm like one of these kids, right? Because I've never done this either. This is amazing. And we had a blast. We met the Rockettes. They were like, these kids were just having the time of their lives, and I was too. It was so awesome. And then they all came up and filmed Christmas we all went to my sister's for Christmas, and they filmed that. And people were like, dude, what? I remember Ed Jovanovski, we were in warm up. He goes, how many people are in your family? And I go, I don't know. Ask me next week. There might be more.
Yeah.
And people were just like, that's ridiculous. And now there's got to be like 20 more people in the family than there were 12 years ago. But it was really cool that they got to put all that in, and they did a lot of different things on both families. I know they went to Danny Briere's house. I watched that too, because I was like, what makes them tick?
Mm-hmm.
And I loved how they got really pretty, in depth and to a certain point with keeping, certain levels of privacy.
I was actually curious how much like you guys watched that from maybe even like a competitive advantage, because I mean early on Claude Giroux, he was down with a concussion and whatnot, and just to see like if you guys are picking stuff apart, just because we're running a little short on time here, I do want to quickly get to the actual game itself. Do you have a specific memory from that classic? Obviously, I mean, it started 2 hours late because of a weather delay.
That I remember.
Yeah, Rupper with the Yager salute, Hank with the penalty shot. What is there one thing that stands out to you from that game?
Well, Rupper was awesome. That's a long story, but I think he might have told it. But anyways, my mom was there. They had beer poured on her the night before. We all got together, and like so many Rangers fans were in this family room that were connected to the team somehow, that people would know, like high profile people, and we all were hanging out with them. My parents got a kick out of that. What the Rangers did for our families was unbelievable. The flyover, the fighter jets was like goosebumps. It was hard to play, honestly, because it was unlike anything I'd ever done. And then so you play, and it's like a game 7. It really is like a game 7, because it's like there's no game tomorrow. There's no series here. Even though it's a regular season game, there's more to it. The ice wasn't great. The
Mm-hmm.
The surrounding fans that weren't right on you actually made it different because like usually I can sense the fans making noise and they were just far away. So it's actually hard to play. I remember we switched lines like 7 different times. And I thought after the game I played like 24 minutes. I played like I don't know, 14. And I'm like, it was just a lot emotionally, like took a ton out of you. And winning that
Yeah.
game, the penalty shot call was atrocious.
Yes.
Wasn't
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't have been a
Mm-hmm.
call, but winning that game, we just and then towards like we're not shaking hands. It's the middle of the season, so we just got off the ice.
Oh,
We all were like, "What a great game! That was so much fun. Let's do it again."
You're getting me really excited for the Stadium Series.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's awesome.
yeah.
I can't wait. That's going to be so much fun.
It's got to be a fun atmosphere playing, especially just it's weird that you kind of crank it up for a regular season game, and then you got to bring it all back to playing in arenas. Well, we're gonna close out the episode of Up in the Blue Seats coming up next, and that'll put a bow on episode 138 of the Up in the Blue Seats podcast, our Rangers podcast from the New York Post. Before we get out of here, we as always have to dish out some stars. Let's go to you first, Molly. Who's star number one of the week?
I gotta go with Will Cooley for his big boy fight against Eric Johnson. That was you just love to see that. That was
Shocking 'em.
really, yeah, that was entertaining. He held his own. And yeah, I actually was looking at it. Rangers haven't had a lot of rookies fight as much as Will Cooley has. I believe the other two is Stu Bickle and McElrath. So
Bixie Cat.
he's in
Shout
some
out Bixie
elite
Cat.
company.
What a guy, Stu
Yeah.
Bickle. Love that guy.
Yeah.
Throwback name right there, man. Forgot about
He's
Stu
the
Bickle.
man.
Stu. We got to get him on the podcast. That'd be fun. Brian, who's your number 2 star of the week?
I'm going Keandre. I think obviously his game, he 2-1 last night, but his quotes about how he self-assessed during the break, took the time, wasn't satisfied with how he was playing. And, he had that couple days off where he had to, whatever he was going through, and then came up big, man. He really did. With an injury to Truba, he took over kind of a sleepy game and made it his own, put his stamp on it. That was impressive to see that he could self-assess like that, decide, okay, this isn't how it's going to be. I'm going to be the player I can be, and he did a great job.
Love it. And my star for the week is going to go to Mika Zibanejad. 800 career games. I keep going back to the discussion we had earlier about how players take into account how many games players have played. 800 is just a remarkable mark. I think Mika said it in post game that it was 800 more than he ever expected
Yeah.
to play, which is an awesome thing to hear him say. 15 games out of the last 16 with points. He's on fire, and he was the NHL second star of the week last week. So, first time in his career to get that. So, congrats to Mika.
First time the Rangers got recognized this season by the NHL,
Yeah.
which I just think is ridiculous.
What?
Not even
Panarin?
not even Artemi's 15 game point streak got a nod from the league. Just it's a little
Just
bizarre.
No
Pardon?
respect. No
No,
respect.
that's what I said. When I saw that he
Uh.
got named the star of the week, I was like, that's the first time any Ranger has gotten such acknowledgement this season. How kind
Can I
of
let
them.
you guys in on a secret?
Ooh.
Yeah.
The players don't care.
Of course they don't.
And
No.
honestly, you know what? I think fans don't care either, especially Ranger fans. I think more than happy. Just let's fly under the radar. Let us go and do our thing, get our win, and move on.
Well, I just
Maybe
think
it's a troll job.
ridiculous.
Maybe it's a troll job,
that's
though, to
what I
get
think
people
it
talking
is.
about it.
I
Mm.
Maybe
mean,
it's genius.
for how
Shout
well
out
they
NHL.
played, they were at the top of the league in a myriad of categories.
Mm.
I don't know. I just thought it was a little bizarre that it
I
took
know.
Mika posting 7 points in 3 games to get a star of the week.
Cue Rodney Dangerfield, no respect. Well,
No respect.
none at all. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate it as always. We're going to thank Jake Brown for producing the show. Catch up on all episodes of the podcast by subscribing to Up in the Blue Seats on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Hope you're watching us right now on the New York Post Sports YouTube page. Give us a thumbs up and a comment below. What's your Rangers New Year's resolutions? Do you guys have any New Year's resolutions you want to share on the show right now? I can share one with you, and I think both of you will appreciate it. I swear to never say coach or manager instead of coach until baseball season starts. That's my
I was gonna
resolution.
say, don't make promises you can't keep.
I'll keep a jar right over here and I'll
There's
just
just no
drop
way
a
that
dollar.
you won't get through January, Andrew.
Whoa, challenge accepted,
That
Brian.
was a threat.
Well, everyone else here, you can make your resolutions below. Would love to hear them. We may even read them on the air. So drop some good ones. You can also follow us on Twitter. That's at Mollie Walker. That's 2 E's, 2 R's. Briar Brows 22 and myself, Andrew Harts, without the E. For Brian Boyle, Larry Brooks, Mollie Walker, I'm Andrew Harts. Thanks for listening and watching to Up in the Blue Seats all season long. We'll be back next year. Sorry, I have to make that.
You have
Hope
to.
y'all, I know, hope y'all have a good new year. Celebrate safely, be good, and we'll see you when the puck drops in 2024. Later.